Mike. Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1511 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, the best baseball in the city outside the Dome. Join me July 7th at Christie Pitts. I'm recording live at 2 p.m. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Season 6 of Yes We Are Open, an award-winning Moneris podcast hosted by FOTM Al Grego, and Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic debut, is the Canadian ambassador to the United Nations and the 21st premier of this fine province, Bob Rae. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
I want to thank somebody right off the top who connected us, and I think kind of made this happen, but I want to thank Steve Paikin. Steve Paikin was given the assignment, can you get Bob Rae in the basement? And Steve made it happen, so shout out to Steve Paikin. Yeah,
I saw Steve yesterday. We did a thing at TVO for Peter Herndorf, and who was a guy that I appointed to be the head of TVO for 7 years, and he did a fantastic job. And he hired Steve, so there's been that long
connection.
Not
perfect.
No, exactly right. But anyway, he's a good friend, so I'm delighted to be with you.
And I don't even know where to go with you. I'm going to try to keep this down to 50 minutes. But you're a very interesting man, Bob Rae, and I think there's so many different threads I could pull out, and we could do several hours. But you've got a crazy schedule. How long are you in town for?
Here, very briefly, I had an event, yesterday with Steve for Peter Herndorf, and I've got an event tonight. I'm speaking to the Advocate Society. About 1,600 lawyers, I'm told, will be gathered at the Royal York Hotel, and I'll be speaking to them. And then I've got some meetings tomorrow and Friday, so busy days. And then I'm heading out to like many Ontarians, I'm going to the cottage on the weekend, and then I'll be going back down to New York next week. So it's been a whirlwind trip.
It's a whirlwind trip.
And I have 3 daughters here and 6 grandchildren in town, so it's a lot of family time as well. And I want to just tell you that my grandson Solomon got a baseball at the Maple Leafs game at Christie Pitts 2 weeks ago.
That's great to hear. I think that was Father's Day, right? The Father's Day
he was there with his dad, my son-in-law, and he was very proud. He phoned me right on the phone right away. He said, "I hear you caught some ball." I said, "Well, I caught a couple of balls in Exhibition Stadium when the Blue Jays used to play there, and I still got them. At the house." So
amazing. Now, the coach of that Toronto Maple Leafs team is Rob Butler, who won a World Series with the Jays in '93.
Yeah, great guy.
Absolutely. Great guy. And much like yourself, Rob Butler and Steve Paikin, they're FOTMs. That means Friends of Toronto Mike. Bob, you're now an FOTM, okay, so you can add that to your extensive bio.
Glad to be here. I'll put it on my. I'll have the way they have it. Like a member of the Royal Society of Canada or something. They have those big initials after your name. I'll put FOTM. People say, "What the hell is that?" I said, "No."
Those. If you don't know, you don't need to know. Those who know. Just touch your nose. Hey, you got this crazy schedule, but I'm going to throw something else at you, which is that you are invited to Great Lakes Brewery in South Etobicoke tomorrow night. That's Thursday, June 27th from 6 to 9 p.m. because I'm having TMLX 15, which is a free event. Your first beer from Great Lakes is on the house, and Palma Pasta will feed you. Bob Rae, you're invited. Thank
you for the invitation. Don't think I'll be able to join you, but I see there's some beer on my table here.
You can take that, right? I was wondering, can the Canadian ambassador to the UN accept such luxurious gifts?
Yes, I think they're under the limit, as they say. I won't tell you what the limit is, but it's well under the limit, so it's fine.
Okay, and that Toronto Maple Leafs baseball, maybe Solomon would love it. It's going with you too. You can keep it yourself.
No, I'll give it to Solomon. No, but I'll keep it and I'll give it to Solomon. Okay, he's turning into a baseball fan.
Okay, and last but not least, before I press record, you saw Bruce Dobigan and Evan Dobigan's name on a book, and I'm curious, are you friendly with the Dobigans?
I know Bruce well. and I would say our political views have become unaligned.
Right. He was radicalized when he moved to Calgary. This
Something
is what he tells
happened,
me.
that's for sure. But no, I remember Bruce when he started out on CBC Radio on Metro Morning, and I really enjoyed his approach, and we have mutual friends. So Bruce and I have known each other for a long time.
Well, one mutual friend would be the aforementioned Steve Paikin.
Yes,
they're good.
absolutely.
They had a show on The Fan back in the day,
that's
Double
right.
Play or something
Exactly
like that.
right.
So that book is yours as well.
Thank you.
They self-published a book called Deal With It, which is about the best NHL trades of all time.
Oh, cool.
And you get a lot of swag here, my friend.
Yeah,
But
that's right. Well, it's all under the limit, as they say. But it looks good.
good to hear. Now, where do I begin? I'm going to begin here because I got a lot of notes about it. So let's just drink this in for a moment, and then I'll ask you about this. And then we'll get serious.
I'm standing next to the mighty Ottawa River. For centuries, this was the treacherous route taken by generations of fur traders and loggers. And today, I reenact part of that route with someone who has a far more treacherous job ahead of them, selling Stephon Dion to English Canada.
That's a good line.
Bob Rae joins me now. Hello, Bob.
Hey, Rick, how are you?
I am good, sir.
Fully clothed.
Good to know.
I'm in my post-nude phase. How about you?
So am I. Let's get on the river. You ready?
I'm all ready to go.
Okay, let's do it. So, Bob, have you ever done any whitewater canoeing?
Well, I've been at a Liberal convention. I don't know, is that the same?
Are these lines scripted for you? I need to know, Bob.
No,
Rae.
not at all.
These are off the cuff. Okay, you're a funny guy.
This is totally spontaneous. I have this thing with Rick where we just hit it off right. The first time we ever met, we just totally hit it off. And every time I see him, I feel the same way about him. We just connect so well. And I'm done. I think I did 2 shows that were sort of like my shows with him, and then I did one with a couple of others that involved other people. But we just had a great time. And I got to tell you, that show, there's a second one, right? The first one was the famous leap into the lake.
The skinny dipping.
The skinny dipping episode.
Right.
And after that one, I had a major heart operation in 2007, I think it was. And Rick phoned me. I was at the end of August. Rick phoned me in September. He said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm at the cottage." He said, "Everybody thinks you're dead." I said, "No, I'm not dead. I'm fine. I'm actually recovering." He said, "Well, we're going to go for a gentle paddle on the Ottawa River. And would you like to do that?" I said, "Sure." And Arlene was like, "What are you doing? Like, this is 3 weeks after you've had your open heart surgery and you've been under the anesthetic for 6 hours. Like, what the hell are you thinking?" And we went out. Of course, I got there, drove myself, as I did driving up to your studio today, drove myself to the banks of the Ottawa River. And of course, we were right next to a major rapids, and we were going to be kayaking, which I'd done gentle kayaking on a lake, but this was new to me. So it was a high-risk show, but it was totally spontaneous and completely enjoyable. I think, in fact, it's a better episode even than the first one because it has a reprise of the first one. So if you want to see the whole thing, you get it by watching that second show. Yeah, it's a great one.
So shout out to Rick Mercer, also on FOTM. But
Please.
Bob Willett wanted me to ask you, have you been skinny dipping lately? Like, have you skinny dipped since that recording with Rick Mercer?
I skinny dip every summer. I have a cottage, so yeah, it's a. But I've got to be a little more discreet. As my daughters have grandchildren, and we all have. They don't want Papa to go nuts.
You don't want to traumatize anybody.
No, I don't want to offend anybody, so I have to be careful.
Well, Al Grego, who has a gift for you too, I'll give that to you after this statement. But he says, ask him if he's tired of being asked about the skinny dipping with Rick Mercer. Like, does it ever get tired that here it goes again?
The funny thing is that. It takes me by surprise because and I'm going through the airport with Arlene sometimes, and somebody will come up and say, "Bob, this is the first time I've ever seen you with your clothes on," and of course, at one time I got on an Air Canada flight and the steward of the Air Canada flight said, "Hey Bob, nice ass." I said, "What?"
You're not gonna. It's gonna be the first line in your bio when you pass away in 50 years.
I mean, the funny thing about that episode, that experience, was it was like the shows I always do with Rick, completely spontaneous. I had no staff with me.
Right.
They would have immediately vetoed this concept. In the middle of a leadership race, and I do this thing, and after it's over, and I come home and tell Arlene and my sister, my mother, what I'd done, they said, "You're crazy. Like, what are you thinking?" Like, and one of my friends said, "That Bob, that's the end of your career. Like, no one is going to take you seriously anymore at anything." And I said, "Oh God, I don't know." And then I said to my mom, "Please watch the show." And she watched it, and she phoned me up right away. And she said it was hysterical. And look, no, I mean, it's Canada. Nobody takes offense at this thing. We don't take ourselves that seriously. And I mean, skinny dipping is a great Canadian tradition. I mean, it's even though this was in October.
Wow.
In the Killarney Park, so it was. But luckily,
I love Killarney.
Yeah, it was a great park.
Great park.
Great time.
Now, I got to just point out, like you pointed out as well, that, I kind of thought you'd have maybe a little mini entourage or something.
Right.
Because I'm used to people like yourself coming over. Although, shout out to Kathleen Wynne, who dropped by a couple of months ago and just kind of, I mean, she's not an active politician, but she just kind of came in the side door and nobody was with her. But for some reason, I thought you might have a handler or a driver, but you just drive yourself here, and here you are in South Etobicoke.
Yeah, high risk. Well, I know South Etobicoke well. I used to campaign here. I mean, the Etobicoke Lakeshore was a constituency that we won provincially with Ruth Greer years ago, and she's a fantastic friend. She and her husband lived not too far from here.
Okay.
And we campaigned together here. So I've seen the changes in Etobicoke, quite extraordinary on the lakeshore, and the factory's gone and all the new housing. It's a total transformation down here.
Yeah, the Campbell Soup factory's gone. There's a lot of big changes. But I noticed Mimico changing rapidly, growing rapidly, Long Branch growing rapidly. New Toronto, where you are right now, is kind of stuck in a little time warp here. But don't ever change.
It's delightful. Well, you've got a tremendous studio here with all the lighting and the fantastic windows. You can see a view of the lake from here. It's really terrific. It's really wonderful. I mean, I should tell people about it. It's just extraordinary.
It could be a blizzard outside. We'd be oblivious.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's kind of. I think this is built for a nuclear attack or something.
Well, you'll be safe down here. We need somebody to
feel very safe.
Lead this country. Okay, so many places to go. Again, many people had questions. Brian C. says, ask Bob how he has such an amazing memory to remember people by their names. I met him in Montreal once, nearly 10 years after I first met him for his first nomination for Broadview Greenwood at my parents' house. Hi, Brian, as he walked up to me. I've never forgot it. You got a good memory. You remember people. I'm
lucky that way. I mean, I must say I don't take it for granted, and I would dare say that it's something that I learned how to do by putting faces and names together. I think the political campaigns helped me to do it and forced me to do it.
Right.
And to be very honest, I think at the beginning of my political career, people said, "Oh, he's a little bit oblivious. He's a little bit aloof." And I said, geez, I got to work on this. Like, I got to work on eye contact. I got to work on, getting to know people. Now you see you turning to look at me and not looking at your microphone. But those things matter to people, and they matter in communication, how you communicate with people. So yeah, I've tried to keep it up, and it's fun. And on the other hand, you do have these meetings with people say, "Bob, you remember me?" And I figure, oh God, no. Have we met? And they say, "No, we haven't met, but I've seen you on TV a lot." So you say, "What the hell is that? Like, how am I supposed to
remember? That's not fair."
I said, you may have seen me. I haven't seen you.
A different Brian Gerstein says, ask Bob Rae if he remembers our chat watching Denis at the U.S. Open. How did he become such a big tennis fan? Has he been to any of the other three majors?
Yeah, been to the U.S. Open and Wimbledon. Okay. And yes, I do remember the chat. And the fact is that I grew up playing. My dad was a good tennis player, and my parents played tennis, and I grew up watching, playing with them and playing with my brother. And right. I'm not a star tennis player, but I've been reasonably good in my time as a B player, probably now a C player, but a little slower. But I really enjoy tennis. It's a great sport. And I first went to a tournament years ago, and it was so fantastic watching it in person and watching these guys. They traveling with the Kramer troupe. Remember the time when the pros and the amateurs were separated out. So if you wanted to make any money at tennis, you had to kind of quit the tournaments. And the majors, you couldn't play in the majors if you were a pro.
Okay, I don't remember this.
Well, there's a whole pro circuit that played, Pancho Gonzalez and and Lou Hode and all those Kenny Rosewall, all those great players. You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Well,
you're way
my
too
memory,
young.
Your hair
is getting older, but you
my
seem
hair is
awfully
very
young.
old. I'm 50 years old tomorrow.
Well, good. That's nothing. That's
and
good.
My first memories of tennis are like Yvonne Lendl.
Yeah, well, these are a little later, these guys. But after, you see, the point about what happened in the late 60s was the pros were allowed to play finally once again.
Okay.
And I saw Kenny Rosewall play when he came back from being not allowed to play to being able to play. And he went all the way to the finals at Wimbledon. And I got tickets. And when I was a student at Oxford. And it was an amazing experience watching him play. And then since then, I've been able to get to Wimbledon once and to the U.S. Open a couple of times because I get to go now.
Amazing.
I live in New York.
Right.
So
You can walk there.
I can walk there, sort of.
Now, okay, so shout out to Brian Gerstein, who I'm going to see tomorrow. Brian, I just want you to know I will bring you the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball book that I promised you. So I've got it already upstairs. It's going in my backpack tomorrow. So you're getting that like Bob got. And Al Grego, you had that great question about the skinny dipping. I just want to give your gift to Bob Rae right now. This wireless speaker right there,
Whoa.
That's courtesy of Al Grego. He's with Moneris. He hosts an award-winning podcast for Moneris called Yes, We Are Open. And with that Bluetooth speaker, you can listen to season 6 of Yes, We Are Open and anything else you want to listen to. We'll get to music a bit later.
Totally cool. Thank you very much, Al.
Yeah, shout out to Al. You can call
Shout
him
out
Al.
to Al.
You can call him Al, as I say.
Yeah, call me Bob. That's great.
Basement Dweller wants to know what you think of the potato latkes at the Free Times Cafe. Are they good?
Yes. Potato latkes are great.
Did I say it wrong? Say it again. Latkes?
Latke.
I said
A
latkes.
latke.
I'm so ignorant.
Latke. No, it's fine.
What is the connection there? I do know there's a connection between you and the Free Times Cafe.
Well, it's just a place I go every once in a while, and it's a. My wife is Jewish, and so when I was in my 20s and 30s, and we were dating and getting married, my life was changed in a dietary way.
Right.
I suddenly learned about foods that I'd only heard of or read about, but I'd never actually eaten. So yeah, delicious. And the funny thing about latkes is you find them in all the Eastern European cultures, right?
Yeah. I can imagine so.
Yeah, various kinds of pierogies or other things. They're all
Sure.
all related.
All related here. Now, your uncle, I'm just curious because I'm kind of digging into you and I'm like, what's interesting in the bio that's not the regular stuff? And I learned about a show that I missed, okay? But this show was called The Jackie Rae Show, aired on CBC. It turns out this Jackie Rae fellow flew Spitfires in the Second World War and he earned the Distinguished Flying Cross in 1943. That's amazing. But you're related to Jackie Rae, who's no longer with us.
My uncle, no, Jackie's passed away. My father's younger brother. My father, my Aunt Grace, and Uncle Jackie were part of a vaudeville troupe called the Three Little Rays of Sunshine. Okay. They traveled across Canada. My dad was a song and dance guy. He was a great tap dancer and a great singer, great piano player. And Uncle Jackie, Grace was a dancer and worked for a year at Radio City Music Hall, came back to Toronto and did some choreography and stuff. And Uncle Jackie was joined the service when he was very young. I think he's probably underage when he joined the Air Force and trained in Goderich and went to the UK and fought at Dieppe. And that's when he won the DFC. Never talked about it much until the very end of his life. And he came back. He worked in England for a time. Then he worked in Canada, came back to Toronto. He ran the Canadian Talent Library, which was with Standard Broadcasting and others to build up Canadian talent so people could get on the air because the government had created all these rules for Canadian content on the radio. And but prior to that, Jackie worked at the CBC. He worked with the Wayne and Schuster show, and there was a radio show. And then he was and he was 32 or 3, very young guys, made the head of Variety and Canadian TV and Canadian CBC television, and he had his own show for a couple of years, the Jackie Rae Show, which was sort of a variety show. Wally Coster was one of the singers. You wouldn't have heard of any of these guys, but he was, and he also.
But
did
I know Wayne and Schuster.
He did, Wayne and Schuster.
My buddy was on that show as the kid. Whenever they needed a kid, it was Stu Stone.
Exactly. Well, the funny thing about Johnny was and Frank Schuster were my dad worked with them at the UC Follies. University College Follies was the variety show that was put on by students in the 30s at the U of T. And my dad was the producer of that show. And Wayne and Schuster had just moved up to university from Harvard Collegiate, where they were star performers. Oh. And they were. I've got the program actually from the 1936 UC Follies. My proud part of my my memorabilia collection.
Okay, so that was low in the mix there. Here, I'll play the other one here. There's a lot of this online,
Sir
by the way.
Andrew Lloyd Webber
Hold on.
threw
Here.
a birthday party for the Queen a few years ago.
I know what's coming.
Just a little of this, because it makes sense, though, knowing about your Uncle Jackie Ray.
He would ask friends to perform some of Her Majesty's favorite songs. A source at the palace told him about her fondness for People Will Say We're in Love from Oklahoma, but also for anything by Cole Porter. As a special tribute, the Honorable Bob Rae, a former Premier of Ontario, is now going to perform one of Cole Porter's best-known songs with new words, especially crafted for the Queen of Canada on her 90th birthday.
That's the biggest applause I've ever received. You know, I would never get that in politics.
Brent Carver and Susan Aglukark. So, be gentle.
And you're on piano here.
Words poetic. I'm quite pathetic that I've always found it best, instead of getting them off my chest, to let them rest unexpressed. I hate parading my serenading. I'll probably miss a bar, but if this ditty is not so pretty, at least I'll tell you how great you are. You're the top. You're the longest ruler on planet Earth. There is no one cooler. You're the one who calms a PM's troubled brow. You're on the money. You're Philip's honey. You're a total wow. You've got staff to do all the dusting.
But you do realize, Bob, in an alternate universe, if your life had gone a different route, you would be like Jackie Ray, your uncle there. You could be a song and dance man. This is you're a talented guy.
Well, I enjoy it. I've had a lifelong joy of music, and it's made a huge difference in my life. Music is a big mood changer for me. I find that if I'm down, if I'm low, if I'm feeling crappy, music makes a huge difference, and all kinds of music, classical music.
Well, that's my next question.
Yeah.
What are your jams, Bob Rae?
Well, no, I play my own stuff. I write my own music, and I write songs, which I've had great pleasure. Carol Welsman actually did a wonderful version of the song I wrote, which is still very special to me, and I've had a lot of fun playing. Written a couple of songs about kids and other things, which have been, a big part of my life. And plus, I love listening to classical music. I do really enjoy that. So,
do you enjoy any contemporary music or any modern music?
What's modern? Like what do you think?
I'll let you go back to the 90s.
Well, Randy Newman. I love Randy Newman.
Okay.
Big influence. I like the big guys. I like Elton John and Billy Joel and that style of music, that style of playing. I've enjoyed that a lot. And but I just love contemporary music going back to the 60s and 70s. I play it all the time. I find contemporary music a little far removed from my world, but that's okay. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I like rap. I like listening to rap. In fact, like when I was premier, we created a program for young black kids, and to get them a chance to get their first jobs. And we did a thing where in the arts where kids could take the summer and learn how to do stuff. And in fact, a lot of hip hop started in Toronto in those days because of that program. And
okay, well, shout out to DJ Ron Nelson and his Fantastic Voyage, his CKLN show, and then that gives us, we got Maestro Fresh West and Mishi Me and the Dream Warriors. Quite a scene happening in the early 90s in this city. So good on that. Okay, now I realize, okay, you got Bob Rae here. We're going to cook with some gas here. So I'm going to start with some current events, and then I have some highlights. I heard you were delivering papers to Richard Nixon.
Yeah, I was a paper boy.
You used to deliver. So there's fun facts there. But let's talk really for a moment here about what happened the other night. So just because I'm curious, Midtown Gord wrote in first. He says, I'm not sure when you have Bob Rae in, but as a lifelong resident of St. Paul's, my question has to do with the by-election. How does this affect the future of Justin Trudeau as leader within the coming years? So he wants to know, and this is the obvious happening that we can talk about right now, is the Toronto Fortress has been penetrated, Bob Rae, okay? There's a Conservative Party MP in the city of Toronto, Don Stewart, Don the Con. He won that federal, by a slim margin, 1.8%. What does this mean for the federal leadership of the Liberal Party?
Only time will tell. I'm not in politics directly. I have to be careful what I say, but I do have a historical perspective going back to the beginning of my political career. I was actually elected for the first time as an MP in 1978 in a by-election, which was one of 14 or 15 by-elections across the country, which the Liberals didn't. I don't think they won a single one across the country. They might have won one, but I'm not sure. I don't think they won any. That was in 78, 79. Joe Clark won a minority. Everybody expected Joe Clark to get a majority, but he was held to a minority. And then in 9 months after that, Pierre Trudeau made a comeback. So that's the first thing I would say. So you don't know, and don't read it. Don't read trends into everything. Right. The second thing is, most of my political career, Toronto was very competitive between the three political parties. All the time I was in federal and provincial politics in my first run between 78 and 96. It was very competitive in every respect, and the Conservatives won seats, the Liberals won seats. So when people talk about this fortress liberal kind of thing, you sort of say that's a relatively recent phenomenon created in 93 by Mr. Chrétien having the benefit of the Conservatives being divided between Reform and PC.
Well, I was going to point out here is that you're right, of course.
Thank you.
But the Progressive, now we're talking federally now, the Progressive Conservative Party is not the Conservative Party of Canada. So I feel like this, I believe, I haven't even checked Wiki yet, but this might be the first Conservative Party MP in Toronto ever.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but that feels right just from...
Yeah, but that's, I guess that's because my kids always joke about this, but I really do have a historical sense of these things. Right. It's like nothing lasts forever in the sense of, is everybody being elected in one city going to be all of one party? No, probably not. And then when it changes, you say, well, this is huge. And you say, well, let's see how this evolves. But Mr. Trudeau and the Liberal Party will make their choices. But I do think it's important for people to kind of look at it a little bit in perspective. There is a difference between what happens in just historically, this is not a partisan point. There is a difference between what happens in by-elections and what happens in general elections. That's generally speaking true. And I think it's important for people to remember that.
Well, that's good perspective. Justin's dad, you worked on his 1968 Liberal leadership campaign. So yes. You were, starting your adult life, you were supporting the Liberal Party.
Yes.
So, okay, so I did brush by the Richard Nixon. So quickly, tell us how you were delivering newspapers to Richard Nixon, and then I need to know why you decided to join the NDP back in, 50 years ago, 1974.
Well, let's keep it as short as sweet as we can. I was a paper boy in Washington, D.C. because my dad was posted to Washington. My dad was a career diplomat, and so when I was a young boy,
right.
I had a paper route with friends and my brother, and delivered all kinds of different newspapers over my paper boy career for 6 years, and Richard Nixon was one of our customers, because in those days the vice president lived in a regular house just around the corner from where we lived. So it was not unusual. In fact, his daughter went to primary school with me at Horace Mann Public School.
Okay, fun fact. And by the way, I think you might be the first Rhodes Scholar on Toronto Mike. I have to did little digging here, but that's impressive unto itself. You're a Rhodes Scholar.
I know quite a lot about Rhodes. I got to say, the Gardner is a real.
Well, I have half an hour. I want to talk to you about the Gardners.
Exactly, the Gardner parking lot. The reason I was a little bit late getting here was there's a lot more stuff going on in the Gardner.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, he's a busy guy. I'm like, but he's, still, he could send me a note or something. But you were only 5 minutes late. But
there you go.
Okay, so what caused you to leave? Stop supporting the Liberal Party and join the NDP back in 1974?
Well, I came back to Canada after being a student in England for a while, and worked as a community worker in North London. Then came back to go to law school, and it was the mid-'70s. Stephen Lewis was the leader of the provincial New Democrats, and I thought he was terrific. And I did some work for the United Steelworkers as a young law student, and continued to work for them. Became a labor lawyer, and it just seemed like a natural fit at the time. And so wasn't some dramatic religious conversion. I didn't have I was over in the UK. I didn't have a Liberal Party card or anything, but I did. I was an active young Liberal in 67, 68, 69. And I never frankly thought that much about one or the other, as much as I did feel very much that Stephen Lewis was looking at life from a perspective of social justice and social reform that I really respected. And as it so happened, the federal seat came open, and the guy who had been the federal MP, John Gilbert, was somebody I knew very well in the East End of Toronto. And I was encouraged to seek the nomination, which I did. And I'm very glad that I did, and I'm very glad that I was able to contribute. It really, I think I found my vocation when I became an active politician and an active advocate for people, and maintain that sort of thinking about things. I mean, I still consider myself to be in public life in some way or another. I do it in different places and different times, but I feel that it's a combination of working with people, which I really enjoy, and working for people, and working for causes and for values that I believe in. And I've had the opportunity to do that over 50 years, and it's been it's a wonderful run. I can't say it's been a wonderful run, because the run is still going on.
Well, I'm going to ask you, before I get to a great comment from Gare Joyce that ties in nicely with the late 70s when you're in federal politics with the NDP. But before I get there, are you done with political life? Like you got some gas left in the tank? You're going to take another run at become an MP again? Any chance?
I have no plans. No plans to do that.
You're going to make the announcement on Toronto Mike?
No, I've been asked to stay on for another year at the UN. So I'll do this job through this year, and I'll be becoming the president of the Economic and Social Council of the UN, which is a great post, a great opportunity to serve. And I think at the conclusion of that time, I think I'll be ready to come back to Toronto, but I'm not thinking much about what comes next. I like what I'm doing right now, and I'm not going to get provoked into saying something foolish.
Okay, a couple of questions about what you're doing now coming up.
Nice try, though. Nice try. That's right. It's good.
No pressure. I will take that beer back from you, Mr. Rae. Okay. Okay,
I'm not
Gare
drinking
Joyce.
The beer, for the record. I'm drinking
He's
water.
drinking water, everybody. Gare Joyce writes in, I volunteered for him in Broadview Greenwood back in, the years I'm curious, he says 79, 80, but I think it was maybe earlier than that, right? Because I heard you say 1978.
I was first elected in 78 and then re-elected in 79 and 80. So she's telling the truth.
Yeah, so Gare, his real name Gary. He goes by Gare, just too many Garys out there. They're not making any more Garys, but he's like, I'm going to take this back from the Garys. I'm a Gare. Gare Joyce says, at one of the all candidates meetings in Eastdale, after he mopped the floor with the Trudeau favored parachuted candidate, Bob went to the side of the stage, sat at the piano, and played the rest of them off the stage. The guy could host a talk show and lead the band. Such a talented and truly likable person. It's hard to believe he ran in school with Iggy.
Oh no, Michael and I. Well, Michael was the MP for Etobicoke Lakeshore, so I knew Michael well. I knew Michael and I were roommates at university.
But that's a fun fact that you guys were roommates, and
Yeah, we were. We shared a flat at
rivals.
618A Bloor Street West.
Okay. That's a fun fact. So we're talking federally here, right? So you're with the NDP federally, but we all know you best as provincially. You become premier of this darn province. So what caused you to switch from federal politics, where you were an MP, to leading the NDP provincially?
Well, it was a tough choice. And I mean, I look back at my life, I'd say that's one of the most difficult choices I had to make. It was not a slam dunk at all. I thought a lot about it and up and down. I think the thing that really made a difference for me was that Arlene and I had been married, and we had our first child in 1980, Judith, and 81 she was born. And so I felt that I didn't want to live a life where I'd be going back and forth between Toronto and Ottawa, and staying in Toronto made a lot of sense. It was a hard shift for me. I was not a natural at leading the provincial party at the beginning, maybe never, but I think I was. I got better at it as time went on. But I was at it for 15 years until I left in 96. And it's been an incredible run. That was a wonderful opportunity to serve and really get to know the province and to travel from one corner to another, mainly by car. I mean, you did a lot of driving and a lot of just meeting people in small places. And there are many, I've spoken to small crowds in a lot of places, like I can tell you, like tiny ones, and but always enjoyable, and totally enjoyed it.
And a little perspective for the youngins out there, but it's easy to forget that when David Peterson wins in 85, that ends 42 years of PC party rule. Is that like that? That's I think I know that I pulled off of Wikipedia.
Yeah.
The 42 years.
42 years, and then but when you say David Peterson won the most seats.
Okay.
It was a minority
Right.
parliament,
and
we had to make the decision in the NDP who would we support. And there was a decision to be made.
Right, and this Frank Miller was leading the PC party.
Frank
at this
Miller
time,
was leading the PC parties. He was the premier.
So what role do you play in defeating Frank Miller's PC party? And then I'm curious how that compares to the defeat of Joe Clark federally. Like, what role do you play?
I played the same role. We moved the motion that led to the defeat of the government in the House of Commons in 1980, and also to the defeat of 79, I guess it was, in December of 79. And then to the defeat of the Miller government. So I used to say I'm still waiting for the hat trick, but I did it twice. And I mean, I have been a member of two parties, but never a member of the Conservative Party.
No, you never know what your next chapter is.
No, you never know.
entail.
I mean, life can go on.
I think you'd be popular with
exactly. I'm waiting for the call.
Call could come sooner than you think here. But okay, so how close do you come to replacing Ed Broadbent as federal NDP leader?
I thought about that. I mean, I had an opportunity when Ed decided to retire. There were people who pressed me to do it, and but I decided that was in 1988 or 89. I made a decision with the caucus in Ontario that I would stay for the next election, and that happens to be the election that we won. Yeah. So
let's not bury this lead. You were the 21st Premier of Ontario.
Yeah.
You led this province from 1990 to 1995. And if we're looking for fun facts, because on this show there's fun facts, there's mind blows, I decide which is which, not Jane Siberry. But you are the first person to lead a provincial NDP government east of Manitoba.
Yes. Followed by many others, followed by the Premier of Nova Scotia. But it was a great honor, and it was a great surprise. And interesting, you talk about fun facts.
Yeah.
The day that the election was called, the day after, the first day of the campaign, the first time ever the NDP did overnight polling, which means you're doing a rolling poll for the party, where you're asking a question, for I think the sample was 200 or 400 or something. And the first day the results came in, I said to my chief of staff and at the time, David Agnew, who later became Secretary of the Cabinet, now the president of Seneca College, give him a bit of a shout out. Great guy, wonderful friend. Anyway, I said to David, well, what were the poll results? How are we doing? And he said, haven't come in yet. I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Of course they've come in. And finally he said, okay, is it bad? Like, it's because he knew that I'm a moody guy. So he knew that if I saw the numbers were bad, I said, oh, he's going to go down. He's going to really, I said, no, so don't do that. So we are in the low 20s and Peterson was in the mid 40s and the Conservatives were down with us. We were just way, way down. And I said, holy shit, this is going to be bad. And he said, no, that's the first, it's not a big sample. Let's wait, And sure enough, as that week went on, even that first week went on, we jumped 5, 6, 7 points. And we started, when we would campaign around the province, you could see the numbers of people coming to the events going up and up and up. And the press weren't getting it. Arlene tells the story. She went onto the press bus the day before the election to say hello to everybody and thank them all for this stuff. And they didn't show her the party names, etc., but they showed her the numbers, and it was very clear that there wasn't in their mock poll that they did,
right,
and in the pool that they had as to who was going to win what. And none of them showed us winning. None of them. Nobody believed that it was going to happen. So this is why I come into this business about polling and about change. And I say polls change. People change their minds. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's set. I would say this is perhaps going a little far for you, an ambassador. I think when you look at the results of the election in the UK next week, it's you're not going to overcome a 20-point gap 4 days before an election and say, the election's not over yet. At some point you say, well, sometimes it's over and sometimes not over. But in our case, it was a remarkable shift that nobody expected. In fact, I saw somebody yesterday at the event for Peter Herndorf, and they said, I was on a plane and the night of the election, and the pilot announced to the passengers, he said, folks, you're not going to believe this. and I didn't know whether people said, let's turn back, turn the plane back. But it was such a funny story. I said, no, it's true. Many people remembered where they were the night of that election.
Shocking. Okay, so I wish we could rewrite the narrative that just occurred the other night as well, which is have the Edmonton Oilers win that game 7.
Oh, man, goodness. Yeah,
my wife's from Edmonton, so I had my Edmonton shirt on.
Yeah, no, it was tragic.
But I'm trying to draw the parallel. If Edmonton had pulled off, that's sort of like you and your NDP party in 1990, because no one gave you a chance. Edmonton was down 3-0, and we were all writing the obituary.
Yeah.
Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home, who, by the way, gave you a measuring tape. That's a measuring tape for you, Bob Rae, from Ridley Funeral Home.
So what was that for the casket?
You got to measure. We need to size you up, Bob. What
it's
are you
for the
going to
casket.
need
We'll
50
figure
years?
it out.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But you win. So now again, time. I look at this clock and I'm like, oh my God, we don't have time to talk about this. But what are you most proud of from your time as premier of this province? And is any regrets? Anything you would have done differently in retrospect?
I think the thing I'm most proud of is really helping the province get through what was a very tough recession with as much skill as I could bring to the task. We saved a lot of companies. We had a big social housing program. We did a lot of great things in terms of equal pay and employment equity and a whole ton of really positive things that I'm still extremely proud of, and I have no hesitation in saying that I'm delighted and proud to have been the Premier of Ontario and to have served as effectively as I could. I think the thing that I did that was what they call a bridge too far was the social contract. I think that in the end, I think there were a lot of people in the labor movement who felt that it was not right, it was not what they had expected or wanted. I felt at the time that it was, for me, it was about saving jobs, and it was about preserving what we call the social contract so that enough people could stay on and we wouldn't end up firing lots of nurses and teachers and seeing others lose their jobs because of the fiscal gap that was there. I don't think it was the wrong decision, but if you say, do you regret it? I'd said, well, I would wish we could have figured out another way to do it, or to do what we were trying to do. And it was tough.
Your last name is Rae. It was too easy to coin the phrase Rae Days.
Yeah, Rae Days was kind of like right there, On the other hand, I was talking to a guy last night at this Peter Herndorf event, And he said, I loved Rae Days. And, it was a 3-day weekends. It was a chance to get some time away and so on. So, I mean, they were not as unpopular, although obviously the government was unpopular. And I never felt that, personally people hated me or anything, but I knew that there were a lot of people who were disappointed. And it was tough. It was a tough time. It was a difficult moment.
Quick promotion that if anybody wants to hear a tribute to Peter Horndorf, there actually is a episode of Toronto Mike where we paid tribute to Peter Horndorf. And my special guest for that episode was the aforementioned Steve Bacon. So you can find that in the Toronto Mike feed here. Okay, so just glance at the clock here. So we talked about your federally, your NDP, then your provincially NDP, and then now you're going to resign from the party, and then eventually you'll join the Liberal Party. So give me in a nutshell, what's behind that decision to join the Liberal Party?
I don't think there was a big change in my thinking or, my political values or what underlay my, my commitment to politics and commitment to people. I think what happened were a couple of things. One is that I felt the NDP, when I left as premier and obviously left as leader of the party.
Right.
I felt that the party moved to the left, and in doing so, I felt it kind of abandoned what I felt was an important object lesson for us, is that we took our political responsibilities seriously, and we were not afraid to make difficult decisions in government, and we believed in governing, and I believed in governing from the center, which is where I think you have to be. You talk about hockey. If you want to score goals, it helps if you're in the center rather than, behind the net somewhere or way off on one side or the other. And I still believe that to be true. And I think that as I began to express those thoughts in my writing, because I wrote a couple of books, I wrote my book on From Protest to Power, and I wrote another book called The Three Questions, which talked about public policy and the choices that people have to make. And as I was doing that, a lot of people said, well, you're kind of moving. And I said, no, it's a time when Tony Blair became the leader of the Labour Party. There was a lot of movement in that direction. And yeah, that's when Mr. Chrétien talked to me. He used to joke with me. He said, when are you going to run for me? I said, well, it's not on my mind. It's a hard thing to do. And frankly, it is a hard thing to do, to not be, to leave a party you've been a member of for a long time and then to join another one and to run for the leadership. It was abrupt, and I just said, I'm going to do this. And there were a lot of New Democrats who felt betrayed and angry and unhappy, and I totally get it. I understand that, and it was difficult to do. But I must say that I felt when I returned to the House of Commons and lost leadership and still went on to run again because I felt I owed it to my new party to do that. It was also a time when I felt a sense of mission, that what I believed in, the kind of liberal and social democratic values that had been part of my upbringing and part of what I really thought was true, was ready to take on Mr. Harper, and that's what I did as leader of the third party for a time in the House of Commons, and I think I helped to reposition and resituate the party, and then Mr. Trudeau took over.
Right, you were there as interim leader between your former roommate Iggy, as Gare calls him, Mike Ignatieff, and then of course Justin Trudeau, who still leads the party today. That's back in 2013. Now, interesting. So you ran for leadership and you were defeated, as you know. And but there was a report that came out shortly thereafter.
Thanks for reminding me.
In case you forgot your own bio, you're an FOTM and you were defeated for Liberal leadership there. But I'm curious about, you mentioned your wife is Jewish, Arlene, and is it true? So I guess this was reported, and of course it's true. But I'm curious. She was approached by a delegate who didn't know who she was, didn't know this was Arlene Rae, and told her not to vote for you, Bob, because your wife is Jewish. This happened?
Yes.
Wow. This isn't happening in the the 60s. This is fairly recent history. That's shocking that this would be said aloud at a leadership convention. Don't vote for Bob because his wife is Jewish.
Yeah, it's very upsetting, to put it mildly. She was
disappointing.
Yeah, but I think we're living in a time when there's just a lot of prejudice, and prejudice is unfortunately making a comeback. I also did a report on the Air India bombing where it was impossible to avoid the conclusion that I was asked to do a factual review of the situation 20 years later by the federal government, and I did it. It was impossible to avoid the facts that the Air India bombing had been planned and carried out by Canadians, by people living in Canada. And you needed to understand that, and also to understand that doesn't mean that every member of one community or another is bad or wrong or an extremist, but it does mean that we've got to understand that this is something that exists in our society. And I think we've seen recently just how challenging it is now with growth in anti-Semitism, as well as Islamophobia, as well as people getting singled out for their background. And it's one of the things about our contemporary life in the city that worries me. And when I come back, it's one of the things I do want to work on as a citizen. Is what's happening to our civic culture and our commitment to one another, and to build a place, a city, and a community that takes care of people, because people should not be living in fear, and there should not be the level of violence and social breakdown that we see. And it is going to require a much deeper commitment on the part of all of us to rebuilding a stronger culture.
So, Bob, I see now by the clock here, we are out of time.
I see by the clock on the wall.
Right. That's right. Now, I'm going to just really quick rapid fire the questions that listeners sent in, just because I look out for my listeners here. And Neil Herland, who is not only an FOTM, but he's with CBC Radio News. You'll hear him giving you the news every hour. Neil Herland. He says, Canada last won a seat on the UN Security Council in 1998. Since that time, Canada has failed multiple efforts to win a non-permanent seat. What does Canada need to do differently to win next time? And maybe a little context, what Neil's talking about. I think most listeners are going to be like, what are we talking about?
What we're talking about is the Security Council of the UN has 5 permanent members who all have vetoes, and 10 non-permanent members who are elected for 2-year terms. And we have tried twice in that period that Neil's talking about to win a seat, and we were not successful. I think it's largely a feature of the fact that getting one of the positions from the Western European and others group, when others in Western Europeans are sticking together a lot more, it's more difficult. It's more challenging. I think we need to understand that. And the other thing I would say is I'm not really dead set on the need for Canada to sweat a whole lot about a 2-year membership on a non-permanent basis on a council that's where the Russians and the Chinese have vetoes, and the U.S. and other countries have vetoes, and we don't. It's not. The UN is a very hierarchical place. It's all about status. Are you on this committee? That. So when I was asked, should we put our name in to be the president of the Economic and Social Council, I said, yeah, because nobody has a veto. And I prefer to be on places where somebody else doesn't have a veto over what we're doing. And I think that was the right decision. So in 4 weeks' time, I'll become the president. You can, call me. The next time I'm on, you can call me Mr. President.
Would you come back? I feel like we're leaving a lot of good stuff on the cutting room floor. Mr. President, will you return?
I will return. I will return, as someone once said, a famous general who also said that old generals never die; they just fade away. So
right,
yeah, I'm not fading away soon.
And don't listen to Neil Young, who says it's better to burn out than fade away. That's not true. Philip Parkinson, quickly here, can Canada realistically hit the 2% NATO target for defense spending?
I think so. If the political will is there, and I think that's something that's being actively discussed within government. I do think we all have to do our part in meeting the challenge, and I think the fact of the matter is defense spending has increased in every single year of the Trudeau prime ministership, and the contribution of Canada has grown every single year, and so I think we just have to keep understanding that we live in a universe where that's something we need to be prepared to do.
What is the most critical issue that you're currently focused on or working on, or both? Because usually you need to focus on something you're working on.
Well, there's really two, I'd say, two big ones. Well, there's actually more than that, but I do think that the first one is dealing with the threat of authoritarian, profoundly anti-democratic governments in different parts of the world that are wreaking havoc. The Chinese and the Philippine government are in a major quiet for us, but it's still there, conflict over the South China Sea. The Russians have invaded Ukraine and created real havoc in the global economy, as well as total destruction in parts of that country. This is a real problem for the world that we have to continue to deal with. And the second one is the gap that's still growing between the rich countries and the poor countries, between countries that are better off and the least developed countries. And this is a continuing cause of concern for me, because the poverty and the challenge facing all these countries in the world, and the level of conflict in the world, and the impact of climate change on these countries, and the social disruption that people are seeing. You saw the events in Kenya the last few days, just incredible pent-up emotion that was expressed in the violent demonstrations that we've seen. This is largely a product of the weakness of social solidarity globally. And we are going to have to do more to bridge these gaps and deal with we saw it over COVID. We've seen it over dealing with some of the financial outcomes of the conflict, the Ukrainian conflict, many countries in deep debt, countries where it's becoming increasingly difficult for them to survive. These are the big issues that I think we need to look at from an economic and social point of view, and obviously will be a focus of my time in that job in the next year.
Amazing, Bob Rae. I know how busy you are on this trip to Toronto, so it's kind of awesome that you carved out an hour to sit in some guy's basement and field all these questions. So I got to say, good on you, because not everybody would do this. This is amazing.
Well, thank you. I had the same thought as I was stuck on the Gardiner, saying, what the hell am I doing here? But I'm delighted that I came and delighted to talk to you, and it's a great experience.
Is this the influence of Mr. Steve Paikin?
Yeah, Paikin has a hold on me, because if I screw up badly, he's got the ability to kind of cause a lot of havoc on the television set.
He can make some noise on the agenda there. Now, we joked about you joining the Conservative Party next and getting that hat trick, but you could also join the Green Party. Shout out to Ralph Benmergui.
Yeah, Ralph's a good friend.
Yeah.
Over the years,
I actually produced an episode of Ralph's podcast, Not That Kind of Rabbi, where you were the guest. So we had a little Zoom meeting. But,
yes, indeed. No, we had a great meeting, and I did when Ralph was on TV. Yeah. I did actually play the piano on his show. If you could dig that up, it'd be amazing, because I have no idea.
Next appearance,
I have no idea what I played. I can't remember.
Friday Night with Ralph Benmergui, is that the show?
That's the show, yeah.
I'm going to dig that up for you. Last question on your way out there, now that I relaxed you. Emily had a great question. Does the current Federal Liberal Party still represent the party that you joined, Bob Rae, when you joined the Federal Party?
I can't get into that. I'm going to
That's another episode.
I'm going to duck that question, because it requires me to get involved in contemporary political issues, which I am forbidden by federal legislation.
So how long do you have to wait? A year? And a year you come back and you'll spill all the real talk.
Yeah, I'll be a little more open to stuff. Yeah.
And then you could drink a beer on the show, and we can get into it here. And that brings us to the end of our 1,511th show. You can follow me on, I'm all over the place, Twitter, Blue Sky, I'm at Toronto Mike. Go to TorontoMike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. Bob's got his beer. Palma Pasta. They're feeding us all tomorrow night at Great Lakes, so come on down. It's no cost. You just show up and eat and drink and say happy birthday and get out of there. That's TMLX 15 tomorrow at Great Lakes Brewery, Southern Etobicoke campus. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. That's where you go, Bob. If you have old electronics, old cables, you don't throw it in the garbage, then those chemicals end up in our landfill. By the way, Cliff Hacking from RecycleMyElectronics.ca, hell of a tennis player. We got to set up a match between you and Cliff Hacking. That's what we got to do.
He could whip me, I think. It's not even close.
The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, again, I'm at Christie Pitts on July 7th. Monaris, you've got a speaker there from Monaris. And Ridley Funeral Home, Bob is measuring his casket his body for his casket as we speak. See you all Friday for Toast with Rob Pruce and Bob Willett. We'll talk about TMLX 15. See you all then.